Your mind is either your greatest ally or your worst enemy. And a 5,000-year-old text explains exactly why you can't stop overthinking and precisely how to fix it. There's a moment most of us know well. It's 2 a.m. You're exhausted, but your brain is running a full courtroom drama, replaying conversations, rehearsing arguments that will never happen, building worst case scenarios out of nothing. You're not broken, you're not weak. What's happening has a name, a cause, and a way out. By the end of this video, you'll understand why your brain defaults to overthinking, what ancient wisdom and modern neuroscience both agree is the fix, and three things you can start doing today. Let's get into it. Picture a small wooden boat on the open ocean. No anchor, no rudder, just wind. That boat goes wherever the wind takes it. It doesn't choose a direction, it just reacts, tossed left, then right, then spun around completely. No destination, no control. About 5,000 years ago, a text called the Bhagavad Gita used almost exactly this image to describe the untrained human mind. It said that for a person who has not learned to work with their mind, the mind behaves like a boat caught in a storm, blown off course by every passing thought, emotion, or distraction. Here's what makes this more than poetry. Modern neuroscience has a name for exactly this phenomenon. It's called the default mode network, the DMN. When you're not focused on a specific task, your brain doesn't go quiet. It switches into autopilot mode. And in autopilot mode, it does three things obsessively. It replays the past, it worries about the future, and it narrates a running commentary about you and everyone around you. Researchers at Harvard found that the average person's mind is wandering about 47% of the time, nearly half your waking life. And the study found something else. When the mind wanders, people report being less happy, regardless of what they're actually doing. So, overthinking isn't a personality flaw, it's not anxiety disorder. For most people, it's simply what happens when a powerful system is left without direction, the boat without a rudder, the brain without training. The question isn't why does this happen? The question is what do you actually do about it? There's a line in the Bhagavad Gita that hits differently once you really sit with it. It says, "For one who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, the mind remains the greatest enemy." Not your circumstances, not other people, not bad luck. Your own mind, when left untrained, is described as your greatest enemy. Now, here's what that does not mean. It doesn't mean you should fight your thoughts. It doesn't mean you should suppress what you feel, white knuckle your way through anxiety, or repeat affirmations until you believe them. That's not what the teaching says. The Gita is specific. The mind is trained through two things: consistent practice and detachment from outcomes. Let's break that down in plain terms. Consistent practice means you don't fix the mind in one dramatic moment of insight. You train it the way you train a muscle, through repetition, daily, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. Detachment from outcomes means you stop trying to control the result of your thinking. You stop demanding that your mind be perfectly calm right now. You practice without gripping the outcome so tightly that the practice itself becomes another source of stress. This maps almost perfectly onto what clinical psychology calls metacognitive therapy, developed by psychologist Adrian Wells. The core idea is that the problem isn't the thoughts themselves. The problem is what you do with them. The problem is believing that because you thought something, it must be important, true, or worth solving right now. The Gita calls this identifying with the mind. Modern psychology calls it cognitive fusion. Different words, same trap. When you believe every thought is you, every anxious thought becomes a crisis. Every self-critical thought becomes a verdict. You're not having thoughts, you're being had by them. Here's a practical question. When you're deep in an overthinking spiral, replaying a conversation, catastrophizing about tomorrow, who is noticing that you're doing it? Something in you is watching the spiral happen. That part of you, the part that can notice the thought, is not the thought itself. That's the observer. And learning to access that observer is the most practical thing you can take from both ancient wisdom and modern cognitive science. The Gita calls this the witness consciousness. Psychologists call it self as context. The label doesn't matter. What matters is the practice. Here's how to stop overthinking using this principle in real time. Step 1. Name what's happening, not the content of the thought, the type. Instead of thinking, "I'm going to fail this presentation," you say to yourself, "I'm having a prediction thought." Instead of "she definitely hates me," you say, I'm having an interpretation thought. This one move creates distance. You're no longer inside the thought, you're watching it. Step 2, don't argue with the thought. This is where most people lose. They try to debate the anxious thought, to logic their way out of it, but your brain is very good at generating counter arguments to your counter arguments. You will lose that fight every time. Instead, acknowledge the thought and redirect. That might be true. I'm choosing to focus on what's in front of me right now. Step 3, give your attention something real to land on. The mind wanders when it has nothing specific to anchor to. So you give it an anchor, your breath, a physical sensation, the task directly in front of you. Not because these things are magical, because attention is a muscle and you're giving it a weight to lift. Neuroscientists call this attentional redirection. The Gita calls it withdrawing the senses from distraction, like a tortoise pulling its limbs inward. Same idea. You're not running from the thought. You're choosing deliberately where your attention goes next. Most advice about how to stop overthinking sounds like this: just stop, think positive, focus on the good, be grateful. And if you've tried that and found yourself still lying awake at 2 a.m., you know exactly how useful that advice is. Here's why willpower based approaches collapse. Your prefrontal cortex, the rational decision making part of your brain, has limited energy. It fatigues. The more stressed you are, the less access you have to it. So, the moments when you most need to stop overthinking are precisely the moments when your willpower is at its lowest. The Gita anticipated this problem. It doesn't tell Arjuna to simply decide to have a calm mind. It says the mind is controlled through practice and non attachment, not through a single act of will, but through a system built over time. This is where neuroscience gets genuinely interesting. Every time you redirect your attention, even imperfectly, even for 10 seconds, you're strengthening the neural pathway that makes redirection easier next time. Neurons that fire together wire together. You're not just having a moment of calm, you're building the architecture of a calmer mind. This is why meditation research consistently shows that you don't need to meditate for hours. Studies show that even 10 to 12 minutes of daily focused attention practice, done consistently over 8 weeks, produces measurable changes in the default mode network. The overthinking circuit gets quieter, not because you fought it, because you stopped feeding it and started building something else. The Gita's word for this is abhyasa, consistent practice, not perfect practice, not heroic effort, just showing up again and again with the same intention, the same redirection, the same choice to not let the mind run unsupervised. The enemy isn't your anxious thoughts. The enemy is the belief that you should be able to fix this in a single moment of insight. You can't, but you can build a system, and the system works. I want to be honest with you about what this doesn't promise. Training your mind doesn't mean your thoughts go quiet. It doesn't mean you stop caring about outcomes or that difficult emotions stop showing up. The Gita never promises a life without storms. It promises something more useful, a mind that can move through the storm without becoming it. Here's what people who have genuinely developed this practice describe: not silence, but space. A gap between the thought and the reaction, a moment where you can see the spiral starting and make a different choice. That gap is everything. That gap is freedom. Psychologist Viktor Frankl, who survived Nazi concentration camps and built an entire school of therapy from the experience, said almost the same thing. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our freedom and our power to choose. The Gita calls the disciplined mind your best friend, and it means it practically. A trained mind doesn't catastrophize every uncertainty. It doesn't replay every mistake until it finds something to punish itself for. It doesn't spend Sunday night dreading Monday morning. It can sit with discomfort without immediately needing to think its way out of it. That's not enlightenment. That's just a better quality of daily life. And it's available to anyone willing to practice. So here's where you start. Not with a 30-day program, not with a complete life overhaul. Start with one habit. Once a day, for 10 minutes, sit and watch your thoughts without acting on them. Just observe. When you notice you've been pulled into a thought, name it and return your attention to your breath. That's it. Do that for 3 weeks straight. You're not trying to stop thinking. You're training the observer. You're building the gap, and slowly the boat gets a rudder. If this landed for you, subscribe. We put out videos like this every week, translating ancient frameworks into tools you can actually use. And I want to hear from you. What does your overthinking loop usually sound like? Is it replaying the past, worrying about the future, or that running commentary about yourself? Drop it in the comments. You might find you're not as alone in it as you think. There's also a link in the description with further reading on the default mode network and the practice we talked about today. See you in the next one.